It's a warning that goes out almost every week in Boston. Beware of MBTA closures and slow zones. For the next month or so, the Union Square branch of the Green Line is set to close to allow for critical repairs to a bridge that runs over the tracks. The Green Line will also shut down between North Station and Government Center, and the Orange Line will skip over Haymarket Station in both directions, while crews work to demolish the Government Center garage. Unlike past closures, the MBTA is not providing shuttle buses to fill in the gaps. Instead, it's urging riders to make use of already established bus lines or to walk between stations. To discuss, I'm joined by Brian Kane, Executive Director of the MBTA Advisory Board. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Brian, I live in Downtown Crossing, which means my life is entirely dependent on the T. And the last time I walked into the Downtown Crossing T stop to take the red line up to Cambridge, I saw that the next train would be coming in 18 minutes, and the train after that would be coming in 19 minutes. I think you can imagine just how frustrating that response, that piece of information was.
Absolutely.
So what's going on?
I've been there myself. What we're experiencing is red line trains that were built in 1969 before people walked on the moon, still in service 20 years after they were supposed to be removed from service. That plus a combination of a lack of people that want to drive those trains and inexperienced people dispatching those trains leads to those headways, which is the interval between trains, being so long. It's ridiculous that we in a 21st century metropolitan wealthy area like Boston have to experience 20-minute headways on our main subway line, the Red Line.
So I'll just notice, right, I used to live in China, and on Chinese trains, they will actually show you that the lack of vibration is so much that you can put a coin on its end for the entire ride, and it will never fall off. That is not quite where we are with the MBTA.
It is not.
So when can we expect things to get back to something that looks kind of like normal?
Well, I'm a little bit of a pessimist on this. I think it will be 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
We've had 30 years of disinvestment in this system. That's only started to get really remedied in the last 2 or 3. Unfortunately, you can't fix 30 years of disinvestment in 30 days or even 30 months. It's going to be more like 48 months.
So I'll say, it's not just a question of delays, right? So according to an FTA report from September 14th, effective immediately, right, the federal government has intervened and said the MBTA must notify it of all misses that occur within 2 hours,
yes,
that it has to provide a detailed explanation of the delays and reporting, the actions taken to ensure that they won't occur in the future. I mean, delays in reporting near misses, that's not even about underinvestment. Something else is going on there.
What you're seeing there is a lack of managerial experience. And so let me see if I can explain this.
Yeah.
For the last sort of 20 years, since about 2001, 2000, the T is operated under an austerity model. The state governments and multiple governors, multiple legislatures have said to them, you need to cut back on what you're spending. Spend less, spend less, spend less. The legislature encouraged them to raise fares. The legislature encouraged them to increase things called own source revenue, which is money they get from advertising and parking. In response to that, the T cut its workforce dramatically. When I left the T in 2018, there were only 5,500 employees. Now they're trying to get back to 7,000. So you can imagine that we were all doing 2 or 3 different things. On top of that, in 2017, they had something called a retirement incentive program where lots of the most experienced people just walked out the door because they were encouraged to. And those positions were backfilled with people that made less money and had less experience. So what we're seeing now is really the results of those 2 twin things designed to starve the T, not only of resources, but of the brains needed to operate the thing well.
So that's a set of root causes that goes back a long time. And I mean, I think we all want to know why it took this long for the investment to come in to fix it. But from my perspective, when I look at this, like, look, end of the day, I'll take an Uber. It's not that big a deal for me. But there are plenty of people for whom, if they can't operate the T, it is a huge problem.
Absolutely.
Huge problem in their life.
Absolutely.
So what's the T doing to help those people?
Well, the T has a number of programs that they're trying to do, but they're really trying to fix the system and make it safe, reliable, and frequent for everybody. And that's what we need to have happen here in Massachusetts. Specifically for folks that are really transit dependent, there's a number of programs to make the system cheaper. But unfortunately, the reliability and the frequency are still, they're going to suffer, like we all are suffering. There is no end in sight for 2 or 3 years, unfortunately.
Does the MBTA need more investment from the state in order to make this actually get fixed, or?
Well, they're looking at about a $250 million deficit in their operating budget in fiscal 25. So I would argue yes. The T has not had a balanced budget in reality since about 2001. Now there have been years where through some smoke and some what one board chairman called fiscal engineering, they have balanced budgets, but it's not real. At the end of the day, they're always stretching at the very end to make it. So they don't have enough investment. Now people, I understand, are not jumping up and down to give the team more money right now because they're having terrible experiences. I would also argue, though, however, that we've tried austerity now for almost 30 years, 20 years, 30 years. It hasn't worked. Maybe we should try something else.
So, I mean, we all want it fixed. It's a critical part of it's part of what makes Boston such a great city to live in. So when it's not working, it's a huge problem. But I think the criticism that a lot of us would make is about communication as
yes.
well, right? I mean, again, I just had no anticipation that I would go from being able to get anywhere in the city in 15 minutes to not being able to get out of my train station in 15 minutes. Why has the communication been so poor?
They are so bad at telling their own story, and it's infuriating, especially for people like me that care so much about it and want to see it do well. I don't know why they're so bad at communicating. They keep saying they're going to get better, but we all keep waiting. I think it's clear that the waiting has to end, and they just need to get much better at telling us what's going on. The team needs to be honest, not just with reporters and those of us in the media, but everyone. All of us just want them to be honest so that we believe we can trust them, not just to communicate well, but to run a safe system. If we can't trust what they're telling us, how can we trust that the system is safe?
Right. And so, I mean, a failure in honesty is not just like, I mean, that is not a problem of underinvestment.
Yes.
So where is the failure in honesty coming from, and what are the consequences going to be for it happening and continuing?
I think there's the failure in honesty that we saw, at least prior to the start of this year, had to do with the fact that the T became very politicized. People that were working there, folks that I talked to a lot, had the feeling that they had to do what was best for the governor, not what was best for the system or the riders. And oftentimes what's best for politicians is not what's best for the rest of us. Shutting down the T, any part of the T, for long periods of time is politically unpopular. And I think that's one of the reasons why it hasn't happened very often prior to the last couple of years. But there is a new regime in town. I think we're seeing some new leadership out of the new general manager. There's a new board in place that I think are really putting this more to the fore. However, it does have to get a lot better.
I mean, everybody wants it to get better. I'm just going to focus in on what you said, though, like failures in honesty.
Yeah.
Are separate from failures in management.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm a professor of management, and I'll tell you, like, failure honesty is when you have lost every connection with your stakeholders. Are there going to be consequences for people who have said things and made statements that just turned out not to be true?
It appears there isn't, and there certainly hasn't been in the last 6-7 months. And I think you're also seeing the results and the consequences to the system as a whole. People are voting with their feet. They're not taking the system like they used to, like we need them to in this region for its economy and its ecology.
I mean, like, you cannot take the system if you can't rely on when it'll get you, right? That
Correct.
is just not an option.
Correct.
So, I mean, what you're describing is a system on the edge of a death spiral. If people just stop taking it, and that's depriving it of major sources of revenue.
Yes.
I'll say that if that's a concern, then people need to address it head on. I don't see that happening.
I don't think we're in a death spiral just yet. We're getting really dangerously close, however. There is something about the people of Boston and in inner core Massachusetts where we just love the T. It's like the Red Sox. Even when they stink, we love it. And I think that is what's sort of pulling the T through right now. That is what's helping it to sort of be sustained. There's only so long, though, that the folks in charge can rely on that, because our patience is getting very thin.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. And Theo Epstein's not out there right to the rescue for the T, I fear. So,
well, he's available, maybe.
What are the concrete steps that you would like to see the T make in the next week, the next month, the next year to resolve not just the problem of delays, but the problem of trust that we're looking at?
Well, not hire Heinblum. Let me just put that out there first. They're just radical honesty. Okay. And that's what I would like to see in the next month, the next week. But I think we're starting to see it. If you look at what General Manager Eng has said about the upcoming shutdowns that you referenced, he's talked about why they have to do it, how long it's going to take, and what they expect to have done. And now you can say, yes, you've heard that before. But if we look at past shutdowns that he has overseen, there was a small one on the Green Line near Packard's Corner in Boston. They said they were going to shut it down for, I think, 14 days. It took 14 days. And when it was done, it worked. So there is hope. I believe that this leadership team in place, especially now with the new acting secretary, Monica Tibbetts-Nutt, they have the right people in place. They have the right managers in place. Phil Lang has brought in a lot of experts from outside the system, from New York and other places. There is hope. I think we can do it. So you asked me what I would do in the next week. Radical honesty. In the next month, I would continue that radical honesty, take it up to Beacon Hill, lobby for additional money so that I'm going to have to do additional shutdowns in the future. And in the next year, pray that these new red and orange line cars that are being manufactured in Springfield start working properly.
Are there estimates of the economic cost to the city of these kinds of problems? I
haven't heard them, but they're in the billions, I would imagine.
So if they're so high, like, is there other sources of revenue that the T could exploit beyond the state? Are there new advertising, like they've been pushed to do that much? Mm-hmm. But you would think and hope that the simple fact that massive underinvestment is costing Massachusetts enormously would be pushing and putting pressure for other. Are you taking steps to pressure the legislature and the governor?
Absolutely. But the legislature has made it very clear that they're not interested in having any of these revenue discussions right now. They're in a wait-and-see approach, wait-and-see posture, which they've been in for many, many years. Unfortunately, we've been waiting and seeing for a very long time, and I think the time has come. I expected to see a big revenue package and a big thing to fix the T this legislative session. It hasn't happened yet. I'm hoping it comes in January. But I talk to people on Beacon Hill almost every day and beg them to fix the T. We'll see.
If it doesn't come, how bad will things get?
A $250 million deficit in 2025 is unsolvable internally. The amount of service cuts that the T would have to make would put them in a death spiral. So it's almost unsolvable with the tools the T has right now.
And so your fundamental message is, at the end of the day, there is no level of good management that will make up for that shortfall?
The T can certainly do better. I'm not going to tell you they're the most efficient organization in the world. They can do a lot better, but there are bright things on the horizon. 500% increase in applicants recently was reported. So people want to work there. So they're starting to get people in that want to do the work. They have the right leadership in place. They just will, at some point, need money to pay for all these new people and to pay for the maintenance that we all desperately need.
Okay. Brian Kane, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.